the Tennessee Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission for February 16th, 2023. Just want to make a couple of announcements. Remind everybody in the audience and the members of the media that are here that this is not a meeting for public participation. Only those that are involved in the hearing will be permitted to speak at the hearing. I would also like to remind or ask the members of the Informal Committee that are here today and present that we do not have a court reporter present for today's meeting. So if you would, for the purpose of transcribing this later, identify yourself each time that you speak and be sure to use the microphone. I know that when we're at the normal committee room, we don't use the microphones as much because it's not as necessary, but I would ask that everybody would do that here today. So we will begin with the Tennessee Department of Safety, Rance L. Hightower. Mr. Hightower was submitted for decertification based on his termination from the Department of Safety. Do we have Mr. Hightower in attendance today? Okay, thank you, sir. Just stay there. Do we have the Tennessee Highway Patrol or Tennessee Department of Safety here today? Excellent. If you would please proceed up to the podium, Department of Safety. If you would please proceed up to the podium, state your name for the record, and go ahead and give your side of the case for decertification. If you would turn the microphone on, please. If you would hit the mute button. And it shouldn't, is it?
It's not lit up.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
Okay. My name is Sergeant Justin Roll. I'm with Tennessee Highway Patrol. I'm assigned to our Office of Professional Accountability Office. On April 29th, Trooper Ruben Basadua was. I'm sorry. Closer to it. Gotcha. On April 29th, 2022, Trooper Ruben Basadua was patrolling eastbound on I-40 in Putnam County when he observed a black 2018 Ford Expedition traveling eastbound. The registration showed that it belonged to a 2019 F-150 registered to a Lance Hightower. Trooper Basadua conducted a traffic stop on this vehicle. Mr. Hightower was the driver of the vehicle, began to question him of why the registration was coming back to another vehicle. Mr. Hightower presented Trooper Basadua with a Michigan title, an auto VIN check paperwork, and a bill of sale with the buyer as Cody Adams, which is Mr. Hightower's stepbrother. Trooper Basadua inspected the public VIN number on the vehicle, as well as the VIN number in the door frame. There was a discrepancy in the VIN numbers and the paperwork that the trooper had. The Trooper Basadua requested a CID sergeant or lieutenant to come to the scene. The CID agent came there, located a secondary VIN number that was on the vehicle that was different than the paperwork that was that Mr. Hightower had presented earlier. They did an NCIC check of that secondary VIN number. It came back as a stolen vehicle out of Houston, Texas, from Enterprise Rental from back in 2018. Ultimately, Mr. Hightower was arrested for theft of property from $10,000 to $60,000 and was charged with misuse of a registration. This also occurred after the first week of his cadet training at the Tennessee Highway Patrol Academy. Afterward, a recommendation was made to terminate him due to disciplinary action. He was subsequently terminated on May 3rd of 2022.
Any questions from the committee?
Charged.
Yeah, he was charged. I think this occurred in Putnam County. The case was dismissed when the arraignment court date was set. The troopers weren't notified that that was the court date, and the judge dismissed the case for that day. As far as I know, I'm not sure at the moment. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman Parton, sir, in the investigation, was it determined that this Mr. Hightower was the actual person that had rented the vehicle and not returned it at Enterprise, or what? Can you go? Did you or CID that you know of put any further linkage to him and the original taking of the vehicle, or was this just a third-party transaction and he ended up being in possession of a stolen vehicle?
I think there was more investigative measures that were made. However, I'm not going to be able to speak about those just because I've not been liberty to that information.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chair. This Commissioner Wright, was this officer a lateral over to the patrol, or was non-lateral?
If it's in the record, was Mr. Hightower already a certified officer before he went to the Highway Patrol Academy? He was. What agency did he come from, and do we have that information? Or
I believe it was Blount County.
Blount County. Any other questions for this witness? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hightower. You would, sir, state your name for the record and go ahead and give your side.
My name is Rance Hightower. I was with the THP. I did lateral over from Blount County. I was in my first week of the academy. Previously, a week before that, I'd went home and I traded actually vehicles with my brother. He had the title. And so I traded him my Jeep for the expedition. Went to the academy. I was on my way home from the academy. I was pulled over. Trooper got my paperwork. He said something wasn't right. And through his investigation, he said it was stolen. I've never been to Texas. I just home and guess I was duped by my brother. I still talk to him since the day. I was a police officer before. I'd like to think I'd never put myself in that position for this to happen, and apologize for.
Chairman Parton here. Mr. Hightower, we're pretty vague in your case here of what's going on, and I think we're all kind of getting the idea that you were in possession of a vehicle, but in the matters of this informal, we need to kind of ask a few more detailed questions. And do you have anything pending in criminal court right now?
No, sir. Like you mentioned before, I provided them the court bill of sale from where it showed where I traded my brother for the vehicle, and it was this.
Have you cooperated with the investigators to help seek out how all this came about? And I know this is kind of a family matter, but being that it's took your somewhat a bad position in your livelihood, but has there been a follow-up as to how your brother acquired this vehicle? Have you given that information, or can you give us that information today?
Yes, sir. Nobody has reached out to me to help them in their investigation. However, I did look into it, and my brother purchased the vehicle from, I'm not for certain of the name. I don't remember exactly the name that he stated, but it was in Atlanta, where he purchased the vehicle, and he said that he's gotten numerous vehicles from that person.
Did he say how he obtained that title that you received?
He told me that he got it with the vehicle.
Now, I can't remember if I read that, but the title that you had it in hand, did the VIN number on that title match the VIN number that was on the vehicle?
Yes, sir. And when I got possession of the title, I did look under the window like any normal person would when you're buying a car. Also, the secondary location inside the door frame matched what was under the window. So I assumed that the vehicle was legitimate.
And I understand you traded a vehicle plus some money.
Yes, sir.
And what? And you traded what for what? What was it? You traded a Jeep?
I traded a lifted 2009 Jeep Wrangler and $10,000 for the Expedition. It was a 2018 Expedition.
And what was kind of the Blount County street value of a Jeep at that time?
It's probably worth, I'd say, anywhere between 15 and 18.
All the questions I have right now, committee.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair. Commissioner Wright. Mr. Hightower, the title that you did receive a title from your stepbrother,
Yes, sir.
was the title in his name?
No, sir. He had not registered the vehicle. He actually fixed the vehicle. He bought it, and it was wrecked in the rear passenger side.
Question why he had not registered the vehicle?
Yes, sir. Like, I asked him, and he said he hasn't got it road ready yet, so he did not get it registered in his name.
Know how long he had the vehicle before you acquired possession?
No, sir, I do not.
That's no more questions.
Yes, what happened with this with the Explorer? You don't still have it, do you? Or what happened to it?
Oh, I guess THP seized the vehicle. I no longer have access to the vehicle.
Well, probably went back to Enterprise and they got their car back.
Yes, sir.
And you're out of your $10,000 in your Jeep, or what happened there?
Yes, sir. I was out of that money. My father did help me pay for a new vehicle.
Weren't able to go back against your stepbrother and get any kind of compensation or get your property back or anything like that?
I was not able to.
File any kind of an action or talk to a lawyer about doing that?
Yes, sir. I did talk to a lawyer.
And I guess the lawyer wasn't any help, huh?
The lawyer was, but my father said that he would pay me back the money for.
Trying to keep some family, huh?
Yes, sir. Right now, I currently work for my father at his commercial fencing company. It's in my hopes to back in law enforcement. I'm 3 years old. That's all I wanted to do. Obviously, this derailed my chances at that. In fact, my meeting's been pushed back a couple times. So it's only prolonged that from trying to get back into service.
Still Commissioner Wright. You were with Blount County prior to that. When did you go through and where did you go through the academy? And how long was you an actual law enforcement officer before laterally changing over to Highway Patrol?
Yes, sir. I went through the Blount County Regional Law Enforcement Academy in 2020. I was a law enforcement officer on the road for a year and a half before I did the lateral transfer to THP, and I was there for a week. Just a little background of myself. I attended Maryville College. I got an education degree I was a teacher in Florida for several years before becoming a law enforcement officer.
This is Commissioner Wright. Did you have any disciplinary action ever taken against you while you was at Blount County?
No, sir.
No further questions.
Commissioner Wagner, I have a question. You say the Jeep was worth maybe $18,000, and then you were out $10,000. Do you know what the book value of a 18 Expedition was?
According to the documents that I've searched at, the value is around $35,000 to $38,000.
Just one last question. This is Commissioner Cherry again. If we take away the theft issue, I mean, it appears that you took an old license plate or an old registration to be able to drive this temporarily. I mean, you knew that's not something.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And the thinking behind that was I didn't have a plate for the vehicle. I haven't had a chance to get it registered because I was leaving for the academy. That's my old plate, so I put it on there in turn just to get me to get to the academy so I can get home and get it registered. Because I lived in Blount County at the time and I needed to get here in Nashville for the academy.
Chairman Parton again. I understand that we talk about this vehicle was wrecked. Was this a salvage title? Was it a bad damaged wrecked vehicle before you got it?
I do not know that.
And you don't know if it was a clean, what we call a clean title or a salvage title?
Sir, I do not know.
Okay. And so I take it you were arrested.
Yes, sir.
You were booked into the Putnam County Jail, fingerprinted, mugshot, bonded out. And then you went to court?
Yes, sir.
And what happened at court on your initial appearance?
On my initial appearance, it was rescheduled due to the prosecutor not being at the court. I did obtain an attorney, and he worked out a deal with the prosecutor, and they ultimately dismissed the charge of the theft by me proving that I purchased a vehicle from my brother.
Okay.
And then they did charge me a fine for the registration violation.
Which is a citable offense.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
No, sir. That
And
was it.
have you been on any probation?
No, sir.
Are you currently under the unsupervised probation or the watch of any courts in Tennessee?
No, sir.
And you've paid all your fines and costs?
Yes, sir. I have.
You're free and clear?
Yes, sir.
You got a good driver's license?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wright, I guess my question is going to be more for the legal side. If we as this committee took no action on this and he was picked up by another department, he still would have to come back before the commission for a waiver for pre-employment? Would not.
Well, he's still currently considered certified at this time, isn't he? So he's still technically a certified officer in the state, and our action would be, if you want him to stay at the certified status, is that we dismiss and it stops here, or you ask for decertification and he can appeal your decision here today to the full board for a formal.
Well, the charge of theft was dismissed, correct? And
That is
then expunged?
Yes, sir. It was
And
expunged.
so the only conviction would be for basically a registration, which would not require a waiver, would it? Yeah. So
You, I want this Chairman Part again, and in certain counties, but I want to make sure you and your attorney. So you've had an expungement, you're saying?
Yes, sir.
All
I gave that to Mr. Bello.
Okay. And have you followed up that all that is done through the Circuit Court of Blount County and NCIC and
it was in Putnam County,
Or I
and
meant
I followed
Putnam.
through, and it has been approved by the TBI and sent back to us.
Okay, you may want to stay on check of that, because I've seen where fingerprints pop up in places, and sometimes they fail to get those cleared out. Thank you.
we have a motion from the informal committee?
This is Commissioner Cherry.
We have a motion to dismiss. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of dismissing this, say aye. Any opposed? All right, it's dismissed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Moving on to the next matter on the agenda, the Memphis Police Department and Desi T. Lane. Mr. Lane was submitted for decertification based on resignation with disciplinary action pending that could have resulted in termination. Do we have the Memphis Police Department here? Is Mr. Lane here? All right. Thank you, sir. If the Memphis Police Department would, your representative would please approach the podium. If you would, ma'am, state your name for the record, and if you would, just go ahead and present your case to the informal hearing committee.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Cunningham, and this decertification request is in reference to Mr. Desi Lane. So Mr. Desi Lane resigned in lieu of termination. He was given a drug test initially on February 9th of 2021, where he tested positive for narcotics. A hearing was held. I have information and documentation that Mr. Lane agreed to enter into the Memphis Police Department's concerned EAP program and sign agreement stating that in order to return to duty, full duty, that he would conform with the specifications of, or the conditions of the agreement, and he signed, initialed that he would, there were several things, but mainly that he would follow up on alcohol and drug testing for 4 years from the date signed below. Also in this agreement, it speaks to that if he's tested again, he will be tested for 4 years randomly, and of course mandatory. And if he tested positive again, that would result in termination. So he was aware, he signed stating that he was aware that if he tested positive again after that date, that he would be terminated. He did receive on that initial charge, he received 30 days suspension and was allowed to continue with employment with those provisions in that were stated. Then on moving forward to August 22nd, Mr. Lane resigned from the police department. There was an administrative hearing that was set for that day, but he resigned. And that administrative hearing was for what our records for DR 121, which was narcotics. He again tested positive on August 22nd. When that hearing was held, it showed that Mr. Lane tested positive again when there was a random test that was done. So he resigned on 8/22 of 22 in lieu of termination. Thank you.
This is Chairman Parton. So it's my understanding he's tested positive twice in your department. One time he was offered services taken, and he took those services, and then there was a follow-up drug screening where he ultimately failed for the second time. Is that
Is correct.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Mr. Lane, will you approach the podium, please? You would, sir, for the record, state your name and go ahead and let the informal committee have your side.
Good evening. Izzy Tyrone Lane Jr. Thank you guys for the opportunity. The first time when I tested positive in May, it was a circumstance where I went to a family engagement, didn't know they put something in the food, and I tested positive that way. That's how I found out. The second time I tested positive, never smoked. I took a trip to Vegas. When I took the trip to Vegas, never smoked. I was in a vicinity where there was a lot of smoke going on. Never did. Since then, I applied for certain jobs, came back negative. I applied for a certain police department specifically Germantown, tested negative. I never smoked. I was just around situations that I should never been a part of.
Any questions from the committee?
I guess what you're saying is that you didn't smoke it yourself. You were in a room with a lot of people, and they were smoking a lot, and there was so much in the air, you must have just passively inhaled their secondhand smoke, and that your analysis.
I recently just got back from Vegas, and I know I went to a couple clubs down there, and in Vegas, marijuana is legal, and it was heavy smoke everywhere, just on vacation. Came back, I took drug tests for a year and a half randomly. 1 week I took 4 in 1 week. All of them came back negative. Throughout that 1 year and a half span, I came back, I was a regular old drug test, came back, tested positive.
Testimony that you never smoked ever?
No, sir. I never smoked marijuana. Back in college, high school, far back then, I did. But when we took the test getting into the department, I written that down, sir.
First time you popped positive, that was because somebody must have put something in the food, but you don't know exactly who or what?
I don't know who, sir. I grew up in Memphis. I got a lot of family around the whole city. Everybody is not trying to live up to the standard. I was trying to make a change for myself. I was just around family members that I had to cut off. I moved myself out of that predicament. I moved all the way out to Germantown area, trying to get myself away from the situation. But then I went to Vegas, just going to the random club. Wasn't with nobody that went with me, just me and my wife. And we were just in the club, and a lot of smoke.
I don't have any experts. I've seen cases have an awful lot of smoke in the room to get to the point where you hit that cutoff. You understand that, right?
Yes, sir. Have you ever heard of the club Dreas in Las Vegas?
Oh.
Yes, it's a very popular club that holds like almost close to 10,000 people. Rooftop parties, and it was just for a vacation.
Commissioner Wright, I have a few questions. Mr. Lane, what's your current employment status?
Right now, I'm applied with Allied Security, and I do a little side hustle with DoorDash on the side, just trying to make ends meet for my family. I just had a 1-year-old.
Commissioner Carter, do you have a question?
Commissioner Carter, just to be clear, when you tested positive the first time, you tested positive for marijuana, cocaine, opiates, amphetamines, phencyclidine, which is PCP, and MDA. And what you're saying that all those substances was slipped into your food at a family gathering?
No, sir, I didn't test positive for that. I would test positive for marijuana. I didn't test positive for those other things.
I think that was just listed on the
Okay.
as a general for what they test for.
Okay. Apologies.
I have a statement. Through my background with the Memphis Police Department, honestly, I gave more back to my community than anything else in the area of South Memphis, from Kansas all the way to Parkway to Riverside. My actions, I understand it wasn't right. I had to separate myself. I did separate myself, trying to change my whole scenario around myself. I moved away from family. I cut people off. I have, in my folder right here, I have pictures of myself that came out of my own pocket, my money. Gave back to community more than anything else. Food drives, to giving water back to old people that don't have much in the neighborhood out of my own pocket. And honestly, it wasn't the fact of being an officer that made me want to get arrested or anything. It was giving back to my community that I stayed in. And I got visual proof of everything, a lot of things that I have done for my community.
Commissioner Green, how long did you work for the Memphis Police Department?
4.5 years, sir.
Any disciplinary action during that time?
Other than the situation I'm in now? No, sir.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Commissioner Isbell, so you tested positive the first time. You went through the Memphis EAP, trying to do better, and you talked about things you tried to do in your community to be better. Did it not ever occur to you that you put yourself in that position when you were in that club where there was drug use going on? Granted, it's legal where you were. You're still a police officer in the state of Tennessee, and it is illegal. It's illegal. Yourself in that position, you see where there's pause here from me to quite understand what your thought process was with that.
This last 1 year, I done got a 1-year-old. I got married. I've been in a lot of situations, as you say, and I just went on vacation for a honeymoon. Didn't know what was going on in the whole club. And yes, sir, I'll take responsibility for it. I should have left as soon as I even smelt the smell of it. I should have left, sir, and I accept responsibility for that.
Right. Mr. Lane, this is not saying that you're as in a bad person. It's just saying what we have to decide is, do your actions account for you still to be considered a police officer? A few words that come to mind of police officers, and it's integrity, professionalism, truthfulness, accountability. I could go on, and I just do not feel like you meet those standards. And with that, I would have to make a motion to decertify.
All right, we have a motion to decertify. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is Commissioner. I echo the motion. I mean, I like the motion in a sense, but what we've really got here, we've got two different issues. We've got one issue: did he knowingly, willingly ingest marijuana? And that's a violation, and it was forgivable on the first time. The agency gave him another chance, and he ingested it again. Whether it was knowing, that's when the credibility comes into play. This gentleman would have us believe that somebody put it in the food, a member of his family, whether it was grandmother making something, she's confused the marijuana with oregano or something. I don't know. That doesn't seem to me to be very likely that something eats and somebody brownies. I don't know how common it would be for somebody to do some brownies, put a bunch of marijuana in it, and not tell anybody. That doesn't seem very likely. On the second occasion, he's talking about going to a club in Vegas where marijuana is legal and going in, and there's so much there that caused his metabolite level to be so high that he popped positive on a urinalysis. And again, that's just not very credible. In my career dealing with drug cases, I've seen talk about passive inhalation, how much you would have to passively inhale, the level that it cuts off for detecting marijuana. To me, it's just not credible. As much as I would like to give, and you all know me, I tend to give officers the benefit of the doubt, and you know, probably more than I should. And I understand that the motion to directly decertify, this being largely a credibility issue, I would suggest perhaps giving this gentleman an opportunity to present this to the full commission and let the commission itself as a whole measure the credibility rather than.
This is Commissioner Wright. Commissioner Cherry, I tend to lean and agree with you on some part of that, but on the truthfulness part, it was actually one of your questions that kind of set my mind, and that was, have you ever smoked marijuana? No. Well, but if you ask me if I ever smoked marijuana, my answer is no, not but. And we hesitated on the but. I think there's been a little bit of truthfulness issues of wanting to come out here in this commission today as well.
And if the informal committee votes for, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Cooper, votes to approve the motion to decertify, and it's adopted tomorrow in front of the full commission, once he is notified of his decertification, he would have then 30 days to appeal for a formal hearing if he wished to have a formal hearing in front of the commission. So he doesn't lose that if he wants to come back and have the full commission hear his testimony, then he would have that option.
Sorry again, I was a little unclear on exactly what that was, just from what we've talked about. But based on that, I would second Commissioner Wright's motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to decertify Mr. Lane. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it carries. Sir, you're decertified. If the commission tomorrow adopts the decisions of this informal committee, you'll be contacted in writing.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
The next matter is the Clinton Police Department and the matter of Christopher McKinney, who was terminated and submitted for decertification based on that termination. Mr. Bello, you were contacted by the Clinton Police Department.
Yes, I was actually contacted by Mr. McKinney's attorney, Mr. Ritter. They've had an issue at their office where the secretary was apparently taking on the duties of the attorney and answering the mail and the emails and not involving the attorney in the decisions. He was not aware of a hearing today that she had accepted and committed him to, and so he had asked for a continuance to a later date. So he'll be rescheduled for June 15th.
And this chairman partner, Mr. Bello, how many times has that been continued by that firm?
One previous time. He was scheduled originally for November, and they had a conflict at that time as well.
Okay.
All right, so we will set that aside for a later date. And I understand that with regard to the next two items on the agenda, Laverne Police Department, Juan Lugo Perez and Lewis Powell, both of those individuals are represented by the same attorney. Okay, and you have a request to make of this informal committee, sir. If you would step up to the podium and state your name for the record and make your request from the informal committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Jack Bird. I represent Mr. Lugo Perez and Mr. Powell. We would like to ask the committee to waive this hearing and set this for a formal hearing before the full commission so that evidence can be presented that has not been brought forth and at this time is still developing based upon the actions in Laverne including the chief of police being terminated and some of his actions during the investigation of this matter.
Motion to approve the request by the attorney.
We have a motion by Chairman Parton to approve that request and a second by Commissioner Wright. Do we have any discussion on the committee? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. We will set that for a later date with the commission. And then the final matter on the agenda is Laverne Police Department and Megan Hall, who was submitted for decertification based on her termination for violation of General Order 300.01, Rule Number 12, truthfulness. With regard to that, with the letter that the commission sends out requesting the person to appear, they are given an opportunity to basically hit the pause button on that and to set that, what would the official term be? Pending. That's right. Thank you. I drew a blank there for a moment. They can put it in pending status until such time as any other legal matters are handled outside of the commission. So we have granted that since it was requested in advance. So that'll be placed into to pending. Does anybody else from the informal committee have anything? All right. With that, the informal committee is adjourned.